أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we will continue with our discussions on the eloquence, the miraculous eloquence of Quran. This is 25th word. Here is the index. This is the 25th word, the second light, and the second beam. And inside the second beam, there are, I guess, 10 points of eloquence, 10 qualities of eloquence. The naming is changing, but it's like 10 different aspects of miraculous eloquence of the Quran. And so far we studied the first seven points, and inshallah we will continue with the 8th one today. And this is really, really interesting topic. What is studied in the 8th quality. It is the interpretation of tafsir of Surah Yasin, last I believe 5 or 6 verses, the ayahs. So inshallah, let's start with reading these 6 ayahs from Surah Yasin all together, and then we can come back to text and read from there, inshallah. Okay, Bismillah. Do people not see that we have created them from a sperm drop? Then behold, they openly challenge us. They openly challenge us. And they argue with us, forgetting they were created, saying, who will give life to decayed bones? Okay, let me start from the first ayah. This Yasin, ayah 77. Do people not see that we have created them from a sperm drop? Then behold, they openly challenge us. And they argue with us, forgetting they were created, saying, who will give life to decayed bones or dried bones? Say, they will be revived by the one who produced them the first time. So I'm skipping this O Prophet because in the Arabic there's no O Prophet. So probably it's true from one perspective, including a O Prophet there, because the revelation was first, of course, revealed to him. He was the first addressee. So there's nothing wrong to say, oh, Prophet, it's true. But since we are reading it for ourselves, I guess we don't need to, at least we don't have to include this extra. Say they will be revived by the one who produced them the first time, for he has perfect knowledge of every created being. They will be revived by the one who produced them the first time. He has the perfect knowledge of every created being, which in the Arabic is وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ خَلْقٍ. Okay, created being, yes. خَلْقٍ عَلِيمٍ. Over everything that being created, he is alim, knower, or having knowledge. He is the one who gives you fire from green trees. He is the one who gives you fire from green trees. And behold, you kindle fire from them. So green trees, I guess, there are different ways of reading this. I'm not sure if it is true, but as far as I remember, there is a special kind of tree where you can use it to, kindle fire, even when it is fresh, green, juicy. But at the same time, you can read it in general, because the wood that we, for fire that we kindle was once a green tree. So this ayah is interesting. The last part, you kindle fire from them. So there's a very big emphasis on you. It says, فَإِذَا أَنْتُمْ, you, minhu, from it, tuqidun. So the verb, like you kindle, comes at the very end. In a normal structure, it should be at the beginning, right? And it would be enough to just to say tuqidun minhu, for instance, from it you kindle fire. That would be enough, but there is this emphasis on antum, you create, you kindle fire from it. And it's actually like you from it kindle fire. So there's an emphasis on this miraculous aspect, that the fire coming from it, it's a miraculous thing, it's an unexpected thing. So there's an emphasis, from it you kindle fire. And it is you who kindle fire. So there's also this emphasis on, like, put yourself into the consideration and read this as a human being, as yourself. Then it will make sense. Can the one who created the heavens and the earth not easily resurrect these deniers? Yes, he can, for he is the master, creator, all-knowing. All it takes when he wills something to be is simply to say, be, and it is. Kun fayakun. So glory be to the one, in whose hands is the authority over all things, and to whom alone you will all be returned. Again, to whom alone, this emphasis. وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. It's not تُرْجَعُونَ إِلَيْهِ, it's إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. To whom alone you will all be returned. Okay, these are the verses that we will be studying today, inshallah. So again, these are the last 6, 7, I guess, verses that I read from of Yasin, Surah Yasin, from 77 to 83. It is 7. It's a simple math, but unfortunately, it took me 15 minutes to do it. It's 7 ayahs. Okay, let's go back to text, inshallah. Any comments, any questions, any remarks that you want to make before we start the text about the ayahs that we read? For those who just joined us, it's Surah Yasin from 77 to 83. You can look at it quickly. Any comments about these ayahs, or maybe about Surah Yasin in general? It's a very interesting surah. It talks a lot about the resurrection. It talks about a lot, actually, like maybe more than resurrection, at least explicitly. It talks more about, what we have been given in this earth. All the examples of bounties that we've been bestowed. And then ties all these to resurrection. It also spends a lot of time, the ayah. I say it spends because the way I feel, it's like the Surah Yasin is actively trying to teach us something, educate us, like speaking to us, actively speaking to us. So spending some time like a speaker, right? Imagine Aisha Nur is telling us something, teaching us something. She would spend some time on preliminaries and then, move to the other parts and so on. The same way, this verse, this surah Yasin is talking to us, teaching us something, instructing us, educating us. And it spends a lot of time on prophethood as well. The guidance that a human being receives in this world regarding the hereafter again. So it's a big surah about hereafter. There are, of course, many other the components as well, but I guess the hereafter, resurrection, as being exemplified and proved by the things that we see in this world. So whatever we see in this world proves, exemplifies what we're going to see in hereafter. Hence, it is a custom. I'm not sure, I apologize for my ignorance. I'm not sure if it is relying on a hadith or not, but we know this surah is recited when somebody dies. I guess first and foremost to remind us, the ones who are still alive, to remind us, the one we put under the earth, does not simply decay and go to emptiness. The resurrection is certain. Any comments? Aisha, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Just a very brief sort of initial reaction that I had to these verses. What gathered my attention was especially in this verse that's also in the text that says, "Who produces for you fire out of the green tree?" I guess it was interesting to me that the verse says green tree. In a sense, it would seem kind of like a redundant part of the sentence, right? We know that trees are green. They're not purple or pink. I mean, sure, they might have certain colors of flowers that come from them, but generally we associate greenness with trees. But the fact that this verse is also explicitly saying green felt like a sort of emphasis on it. And then, there's this sort of sharp contrast between fire and green trees, right? Because fire, when I envision it, is this immediately red, seemingly completely different sort of creation from a tree. A tree is, in some sense, still and peaceful, whereas this fire seems very much alive and fiery and dynamic. Um, and so I guess, just looking at these verses that have such an emphasis on creation and resurrection as well, just verse 78 saying, who will give life to the bones when they are decayed? And even if a tree is not green, with its twigs, with its dead twigs, still comes forth this this fire that can be kindled from it. It's just a very vivid imagery and I guess, example of the truth that is being communicated to us in terms of how my Creator creates and how that process of creation is very visibly accessible to me through something like a tree and a fire. Um, so yeah, I mean that's all for now. I'll there's some other thoughts I have that I think I want to think put a little bit more eloquently, but I just found this verse very thought provoking as well as vivid in just what it brings to me as a human being immediately upon reading it or hearing it, listening to it.
جزاكم خيرا. Any other comments? If not, I will add one more thing about what Ayşenur just said. So this imagery, we see this in many ayahs, surahs, ayahs in the Quran, that we are given an imagery, a scene that we are accustomed or not accustomed, and we are expected to contemplate on it and understand something from it. It gives me, like it tells me that what we see in our life is just a symbol. Everything we see in this life, it's just a symbol, it's just an imagery that needs to be read. So do not take a tree as just a tree, the greenness of it, and then dryness of it, and then the fire that comes out of it. Just like a painting tells you something, just like a painting or any image, a visual creation invokes some feelings, ignites some feelings in you, some ideas in you. This image you see and you call as reality should do the same. You should read them, do not lost in them. Same goes for your parents, your children, your friends, your work, the rock that you see on a street, the girl that you love or the boy that you love, the book you read. These are all just images, some imagery that is created to teach you something, to tell you something. Yusuf, please go ahead. Let's listen to you, inshallah.
Using of kindling of fire from a green tree is also flipping the table, as it is being an example for life after death. So as if death is the previous one in this example, which is the green tree, and life is the fire that comes out of it, which is exactly opposite of how we think about it. Green, lively tree, and fire is the death of this tree. But this example is just flipping the example and saying that, no, I'm going to use the same example, which is going to be counterintuitive to you, but to prove you a point. A living tree, which is relative to fire. Fire is a very interesting sort of existence. Like, it's not as tangible as or as solid as what you would call for a tree. So it might as if implies some spirit sort of a thing, like it's thinner, it's not as thick as the wood itself. So it is saying that this transition you observe, actually it's a way of giving life to something. The tree was not as lively before. You see that with the kindling of a fire, fire is dancing in there, more lively creation is taking place in there. This is not death. The same applies to your death as well. Your death is as if before you, at the state of death, you are this green leaf now, and death occurs to you, which is something more lively in a sense, that there's going to be a life after this one. Although you don't see that part of it, just observe the wood and how fire comes out of it. It's a creation. It's a different form of life. Fire is coming into life now, and it's being happening right in front of your eyes. If you attempt doing it, and you know that you don't do anything to create this fire, it's not part of your doing, but you attempt, and it's being created right in front of your eyes. This form of life is out of nowhere being created in front of your eyes. Seeing this, how come you say that after I die, meaning like now applying metaphor to my own life, now that I am being put into a different form of transformation, now that I am being put under the earth, the wood was putting into a transformation, and fire was coming out. The verse is saying that how dare that you deny or you challenge, saying that there's not going to be a life after that. How is that going to happen?
Jazakallah khairan. That's a great point. Okay, I'm still waiting for comments. If not, I will start reading the text. Okay, let's start, inshallah. Ya Allah. Eighth quality of eloquence. It sometimes happens that in order to impel the heart to accept Almighty God's wondrous works in the hereafter, to prepare, I guess, the heart in hereafter, and to make the mind affirm them. The Quran mentions his amazing works in this world by a way of preparation, or it mentions the wondrous divine works of the future and hereafter in such a way that we acquire firm conviction about them through similar things which we observe here. So he's talking about two things. One is preparing hearts and the mind so that our hearts will be inclined and will be satisfied, and our minds will affirm them being the works in the hereafter. And how this is achieved by mentioning the Creator's amazing works in this world by way of preparation. So mentioning his works in this world, prepare our hearts and minds and make them affirm, accept the truth of hereafter. And then he says also similar to that, Quran also mentions divine works of future and hereafter by making a resemblance, by making a comparison, let's say, not comparison. Comparison may imply the opposites as well, but rather to show how two things are very similar. One, what we observe, what we experience in this life. The second, what is mentioned in Quran as the acts of future and hereafter. So Quran says they are very similar in reality. And by seeing this similarity, you accept its possibility, first of all, and through further contemplation, its necessity. For example, it gives an ayah from Surah Yasin we just read. Does man not see that we created him from sperm, and behold, he stands forth an open adversary, an open opponent, to the end of the surah. In this discussion of the resurrection of the dead, then the Quran proves the resurrection in 7 or 8 different ways. And here in this text, the author will talk about one way. Actually, it will give multiple examples. Anyway, firstly, it draws attention to the first creation. First creation being our coming to the world. The first, the beginning of our journey of creation, okay, as we experience. Firstly, it draws attention to the first creation, saying, you see your creation from sperm to a blood clot, and from a blood clot to a fetus lump, and from that to the human creation. So how is it that you deny the second creation, which is like it or even easier? So author says this is what implied through this verse. So my understanding, my take from this, so author, I don't think author is making let's say the ontological, the argument about different types of creation, the first creation, the second creation. I think he's merely talking about how we perceive things. Because to me, the first time I was created is when I created from a sperm. This is how I know it. It's not about, whether before being a sperm, whether I was created as a soul or not. It's not about that. It's about how I see it. I study my creation. I see. Sorry, my daughter is repeating after me. I see. I look at my creation. I look at my life, and I see that it goes back to a sperm drop. And then this journey of creation, the constant creation, starts from there and continues. And again, the second creation is just the way I see it. That I will die and will be created again. So definitely this is not a philosophical argument, a theological argument, argument, because we know, at least from the author, we know that we are being created constantly. So there is no such thing as first, second, third, and so on. It's infinitely many creations. And with the words, who produces for you fire out of the green tree? We studied this a little already. Almighty God indicates the mighty favors he bestows on men. So this part, to me at least, so important. So as I said, when we read this verse, especially in the Arabic, there is this big emphasis on you. You are benefiting from this fire, this tree. It is for you. And everything makes sense when you realize that you kindle fire from a tree, when you put yourself into equation. Almighty God indicates the mighty favors he bestows on men, saying, the one who bestows such bounties on you will not leave you at liberty. So this is not a perfect translation. It's, I guess, would be better to say, he will not leave you alone by yourself. He will not leave you by yourself to enter the grave, sleep, and never rise again. He wouldn't allow this. And by allusion, it says, you see the dead trees come to life and grow green, but you draw no conclusions from their bones springing to life when like dry fire wood. And so deem men's rising again unlikely. And so you deem men's rising again unlikely. You think it's unlikely. Also, could the one who creates the heavens and the earth remain impotent before the life and death of men, the fruit of the heavens and the earth? Would the one who administers the mighty tree, the tree of creation, the author talking about, administers the mighty tree, attach no importance to its fruit and to allow others to claim it? So is it possible that the one who administered every aspect of this mighty tree, the tree of creation, is it possible that he wouldn't attach any importance to its fruit, the human being? Do you suppose that he would abandon the result of all the tree, thus making purposeless and vain the tree's creation, which together with all its parts are needed with wisdom? It's full of wisdom, the entire tree of creation. It says, the one who will raise you. It says, the one who will raise you to life at the resurrection is such that the whole universe is like a soldier under his orders. It is utterly submissive before his command of be, and it is. It is as easy for him to create a spring as to create flower. He is one for whose power it is as easy to create all animals as to create a fly. Such a one may not be challenged with the words, who can give life to the dry bones, and his power belittled, than with the phrase, so glory be unto him in whose hand is the dominion of all things. It says, he is an all-powerful one of glory, in whose hands are the reins of all things. With him are the keys to all things. He alternates winter and summer as easily as turning the pages of a book, and opens and closes this world and the hereafter as though they were two houses. Since it is thus, the conclusion of all these evidence is, and to him will you all be brought back. That is, he will raise you to life from the grave and bring you to the resurrection. There you will be called to account in the presence of the Almighty. Thus, all these verses have prepared the mind to accept the resurrection. And so have they prepared the heart. And so have they prepared the heart, for they have pointed out similar deeds in this world. I will stop here reading. And before continue our discussion, let's have a break for 10 minutes. I know most of you already prayed Maghrib, but we may have 1 or 2 people who may not. So let's not take the risk. So today will be the last day of having a break for Maghrib prayer, since Azan is called before our discussion starts. So starting from next week, let's start praying for Maghrib before the discussion, and then we will have discussions without any breaks, inshallah. Okay, again, let's have a break for 10 minutes and then come back. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum. Can I see hands or some kind of reaction to have a head count? Okay, 2, 3 people. I guess here 4. Okay, but let's start, inshallah. The majority is here, I believe. Okay, so let's go back to text. So what is the first thing attracts your attention when we read this text? Or maybe another question, what do you think is at the core of this text? So what does text talk about? How would you summarize with your own words? Yusuf, please go ahead.
So it is really, I mean, this for human, the attitude of, is this really going to happen? It's as if it's an unheard thing, like resurrection. Nobody came back, everybody dies, as if it's a one-way road. And it even appears that there cannot be any evidence for that. So this Quran in here is giving us a way to prove this or make ourselves convinced that actually there must exist an afterlife. And the method that Quran does repetitively in here is like, what is it that makes you think that it's not possible? Is it that the creator is incapable? Is it that it has never happened before? Really, is this what you think? So by showing examples or similitudes of resurrection that are happening, taking place in front of our eyes, and also showing that the one who created you from scratch is not incapable. So what is it that make you think that, oh, he cannot do it? Is it lack of power? Or is it lack of, well, why should he create it? Is it that he doesn't have a reason to do that? What is it that makes you think this will not happen? So from those various angles, Quran says, no, he has the power, he has the reason, and he also does it every day in front of your eyes anyways. So what is left to you to claim that he will not? So it's not that it's unknowable or no such things we have seen. Quran says, no, you have seen several examples of it. You keep seeing it. So resurrection is not something that you close your eyes and it is like, wow, this is just too far-fetched. It's unlikely. I haven't seen such a thing. Why, in the first place, such a thing should happen? This verse is teaching us how to be sure about resurrection by giving us multiple ways of, multiple paths of proving that such a thing must exist. So in this way, it is teaching us a way for humans, maybe one of the most fundamental question, and answer to that most fundamental question. Well, here is the solution to that problem. Take these many different examples or methods, if you like, to solve that problem. Not only one, but as author says, 7, 8 different ways to answer that question is right here. And it's being answered, all of them are being provided within a half-page text. So it truly is miraculous in this regard.
Jazakallah khairan. Yes, the similitudes. I love this word nowadays. So recently, at least in my journey of contemplation on belief matters, the similitude, the idea of resemblance or similarity, example, being an example, constitutes a big place, at least to me. So such texts, such interpretations of Quran is very dear to me indeed. So what we see in this world constitute a similitude, an example, constitutes an example for what is mentioned in Quran. It's as if, in Quran, the Creator talks about the universal laws, talks about the general truths, and in our life, in this practical physical life, we see certain examples of these laws and truths. With Quran, we are taught, if we can make the analogy, of course, just to some extent, of course, the Quran is like a textbook or professor teaching us something. We learn the general rules, truths, laws out of it. And in our daily life, we see how these general truths, laws, are manifested through examples. That's really interesting, because that means, if this is true, it means what we experience in this life, it doesn't have any value unless it takes us to these general universal laws, truths. You love your work, you love the things that you produce, achieve, you love them, but they don't mean anything if they don't teach you about these general laws, or if you cannot see them as instances of these universal truths. I'm making big claims, bold, the claims, so I will leave the mic to Mohammed Said. Inshallah, he will speak in a, how to say, more acceptable manner, in a more convincing manner, fashion. Go ahead, please, Mohammed Said.
Assalamu alaikum, inshallah, all together. What I understood from here, from the text that we have read so far, that was your question, so I would like to try to, inshallah, respond to it. I think, our question related to the end, our end in this world, is being answered in the Quran by referring us to the beginning. That kind of got my attention, and I think the beginning is very important in this context, like beginning in the sense that how a thing comes into being. I think if I generalize the question, how a thing can come into being, I think the Quran is inviting the reader to ask this question, and the answer, if I am looking for an opening for the end, I am referred to the beginning, to question the beginning. And I have available, when I take this question seriously, and when I go and look at my available answers, there's one that tells me that the things are happening by themselves. This caused this one, this caused that one, that these are some of the things are effect, or it's a little complicated in that realm too, but things themselves are they are started, and they are affecting each other, and therefore we have some results, whatever the results we have in our hands. So I think that's that's one of the option I have in my hand, and definitely it doesn't make sense very simply put, the things cannot start by themselves. And I think the Quran is here giving me the other option, telling me that you know, we are the one. We the, you know, as the speaker in the Quran, the creator brings the things into existence. And one of the word also got my attention, the command. Command, you know, I think versus the, again, the things themselves are happening, versus they are commanded. They cannot act by themselves. They cannot have a wise relationship, as one of the verse gives the example of a green tree and fire coming out of it, and the Nursi emphasizing on it that there is a benefit for human being there. Can the tree be beneficial for the human being, which is not only a kindle fire? Actually, it's the fire is actually the engine of our, I don't know, human life, right? So there's a benefit, there's a response to a need of human being, as we talked last week also about this point, need and respond to our need. So the Quran, I think, bringing this aspect, telling me that this is commanded, therefore you have these benefits. And also I am commanded, like my being is commanded, my being as I am. There's no way, and there's no it is the creator of the universe that shaped the human being. Each of us gives us this uniqueness and created everything else in a unique way. The uniqueness, in order to be a unique thing, which means like everything is unique, either everything knows each other and then differentiates itself from the other things. Like even I am not the one who differentiate myself from the other human beings, not my mom, not my dad. So the meaning of command kind of emerges from this questioning. I think that's the purpose of the Quran, bringing into my attention to question this point. And then the end is like, through this process, when I focus on this one, the command, the meaning of command emerges, and then it now becomes very acceptable, very logical, and very human to confirm the Quran as well as my human need being responded in this way, that the resurrection is possible for this creator, and it is my need is from him as a promise, and it is a must. And this creator is, I can rely on my creator in that sense, that since I am being nurtured by my creator, and my creator will be giving or responding my need that he himself promised to me. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khairan. That's a great point. Great points, actually. So when you said it, attracted my attention again, like as well. I didn't realize it before, at least the way you put it. That if you want to understand your ending, Quran says, look at your beginning. To understand the end, go back to start. That's very powerful. As you contemplate upon how you are brought to life, then you understand what will happen when you die. So that's one thing. Another thing, like when we talk about the relationship beginning and end, there's a similar argument by, let's say, deniers. I hear this a lot, people says, or sometimes even I, my mind is full of such ideas. Then I can imagine a time that I was not, on this earth. There was no Birkan before 1981. I revealed my age. So what is the big deal thinking of a time there will be no Birkan anymore again? So people would say, why it is so difficult to accept that you will just disappear, you will go to non-existence. It's nothing any different than the times before you were born. These two things have kind of similarity, I guess. What is given here, talking about our first creation and using it as an argument for resurrection. Similarly, a denier will say, how about before your first creation? Use it as an argument for non-existence of resurrection. You are going to non-existence. What do you think about these two? Any suggestions, just glimpse of truth, maybe, if not full explanations? Maybe just sharing us that, oh, I never heard this before, or I heard this before and I'm also struggling understanding. Suhail says, can you repeat the question? Okay. So here in text, author says, look at your first creation. You are being created from sperm and then taking all these different forms. You are being created again and again and again. Hence, thinking about the resurrection is not any difficult, author says. So if you look at your first creation, being created from sperm, it will provide evidence for the existence of resurrection. Okay, this is what author says. A denier would say, oh, I have a similar argument. Look at the time before you exist. So you were not anywhere. There was no Suhail before 19 something, I don't know your date of birth. Before that time, there was no Suhail. So it is not any difficult to assume that there will no Suhail when you die. Look at before your first creation, and it will be an evidence for non-existence, for the resurrection not being the case. So these two arguments, the author's argument and this denier argument, to me have some similarities, but completely different on the other hand. So my question was, what do you think about this? And Suhail, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. That's a interesting thought to bring up. But what's interesting is if I ask myself, can I conceive of non-existence? Can I even really think of myself not existing? I mean, I can just say it. I can say I didn't exist in this world at a certain point. I won't exist in this world after a certain point. But I can't conceive of the fact that I didn't exist or I won't exist afterwards. It's impossible. The only thing I can conceive of is that I do exist, and I can't talk of my non-existence except from my own perspective. It's very interesting. Like I can't talk about my own non-existence independent of the fact that I exist, if that makes sense. In other words, existence is the only real thing to me. Non-existence isn't real per se. So it's to me like ignoring the fact that when somebody talks about existence and non-existence, what are they really talking about? They're talking about something that one can look to, existence, and I can't really look to non-existence. I can't really point to non-existence. It isn't real. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, it's interesting because that person who says I didn't exist and then I won't exist afterwards, but it just so happens I exist in this particular moment. As the verse says, how? The fact that in a moment before and a moment after in this age of this universe, there is something called me. What necessitates that? What in the world necessitates it? The fact that I didn't exist and I don't exist after a certain period of time means nothing in the world necessitates that I even exist. Why now rather than some other time? And how now rather than some other time? Or the fact that it even happened at all. And because nobody really thinks about, or nobody really asks that more fundamental question. Specifically, what does it mean to be and to not be? And can I not be? And if I cannot be, then what does that consist of? And how do I perceive that or conceive of that? It's impossible. And the interesting part of the verse is that أَوَلَمْ يَرَى الْإِنسَانُ أَنَّا خَلَقْنَاهُ مِنْ نُطْفَةٍ فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. Nutfa is like a drop. I mean, I guess you can translate it as a sperm, but it's very interesting. I guess, it's the wisdom of God's creation in that man's existence in this world, his being, his state of being, begins with a point, a drop, like one point in the world. And from that point, man expands. It's like almost like man is in himself, like this, his own Big Bang, so to speak. He comes from a point, and from that point he emerges. The nutfa, like a drop. Somebody who says, "Oh, I didn't exist and I exist afterwards." How do the fact that I came from a point or a drop or a singularity, so to speak, if people are familiar with like physics, but how is that even possible? Because it wasn't even there to begin with, but now it is. It just so happens at that point, and from that point, I come into being, and no sooner than that happens, I leave that world also. But those are my thoughts on like some people who may have some sort of contention. But I think the verse already addresses that too, in that somebody who has a contention with the fact that he was created from a drop when he had no part in it, then by definition, he's a clear adversary. In other words, you can't contend it. There's nothing to contend. Because the mere contention of the fact ignores the fact that you had something to do with your creation, or the fact that you are rather than are not. So that's what I took away from this.
Jazakallah khairan. That's really great. I think I have this similar maybe glimpses that I could see, but with your words, everything was kind of solidified. And what you said brings to my mind these ayahs from Quran, where our Creator says, in a very rough translation, I can't remember the exact wordings, may Allah forgive me, that they discuss about things that they don't know. The people discussing about things that they don't have knowledge. So talking about non-existence as if you know what you are talking about. On the contrary, whatever we see in Quran, when we look at the Quranic approach, Quranic methodology, and the methodology followed by the author, Said Nursi, it's always about what you see, what you have. Right? You see something in front of you. You experience something that is real, part of your reality. And then it talks about your emotions against it, which are again being created in you, existing in you. And then the ideas that you have, again, existing in you. And non-existence is only given as a means of, let's say, comparison, or to refute it. But what you follow, what you use as an argument, is always something that exists. You take something that exists, something that you experience, you are being created, the sperm drop. By the way, I really enjoyed your analogy of personal Big Bang. It's all that you know of. It's all that you experience, have access to. And using them, you can reach to a truth. But instead, you rely on non-existence, which is nothing but speculation, nothing but that's something that you don't have access to. It may take you anywhere because it's boundless. It can take you impossibilities. It will take you to impossibilities. And this is what happens always. So you should stick to the road with yellow stones. So the things that exist. If you deviate from this path, you will lose your way to the Emerald City. Jazakallah. Yusuf, let's hear you as well.
So the example that Quran gives, so, I'm not sure if the two are that much parallel, because when Quran gives one as the example, it's not simply saying here is existence, so there's going to be another one, but it's showing that it is by making me realize the order. It reminds me of the orderer, because there is going to be a reason for me to say that then there must be an afterlife. I mean, it's not simply that, look here, there is a sort of transformation that exists here. Let's say you before your birth, when you are in your mother's womb, and you after your birth. So it's a change of worlds. So why not? Then once you die, there's going to be another one. So it's not only that type of an analogy, but it is that The first type of analogy, by referring to the doer in there, saying that it cannot happen by itself, there must be a doer, and the same doer will do it again. So this is why in the your atheist friend's question is ignoring that part, though. It is saying that there's no such doer in the first place, which becomes a baseless claim. Actually, it's contrary to what I am observing. This is why, from this regard, it's not really sharing any commonality. If we accept that it shares some commonality, then we will reduce the example that the Quran gives in terms of only here's a transformation, there's a transformation, sort of a relationship. But the transformation example that the Quran gives here is coming up with first saying that there must exist someone who makes the first transformation, who keeps making the first transformation. And for him and for you, it is necessary that he makes the same transformation after you die. And there's nothing that prevents this. There are reasons that this must happen, therefore it will happen. So this sort of a reasoning is happening in there. It's not simply a one-to-one mapping without referring to the doer.
Oh, definitely, that's a great point. So with the Quranic approach, it talks about something that you experience, which is real. And then this real thing takes you somewhere automatically by logic, by, through your humanity. It takes you to somewhere, again, somewhere real, which there must be a doer. It's a conclusion. It takes you somewhere. And this conclusion then takes you to another place, which is again real. There's no speculation. It's a chain argument. Each step following the previous one. So it's a real contemplation. It's a real argument. But with the other one, just talking about, oh, you can, speculate about the time that you don't exist. It's by its name, as a matter of fact, it's a speculation. So it cannot take you anywhere other than another speculation. So why not this or that? But with the Quranic example, what is given there, you are being created from sperm, as Suhail was saying. When you look at your creation, your coming to existence, life, let's say, when you look at it, you will see something there. You will see the order. So you will understand that your creation is not out of nothing. There's an order there, there's a purpose there. You will see it when you look at it. But again, as a matter of fact, when you look at a speculation, you don't see anything there. It's just a floating speculation. So one, if I can say, one, which is the Quranic approach, is an intellectual approach, is an approach that satisfies hearts, as author says. It's an approach that satisfies minds. It satisfies human being. It's a respectful, serious approach. The other one is baseless, empty speculation, but nothing more. It says two things. Both of them, we don't have any access. And neither of them take us anywhere. You can talk about them. You can say, oh, you see, that thing make me feel that way or whatever. You can make up these things. But they don't automatically take you somewhere. But when you look at your first creation, it takes you to the creator. So it's not empty. It's full of wisdom. So yes, definitely, they are not comparable. But I guess also it's fair to say, at first look, they seem as if both saying similar things. And this is really unfortunate for us, for me especially. It's unfortunate that I reduced Quranic arguments to only speculations. Hatice asked whether people can hear. Mohammed says yes. So I'm sorry, Hatice, it's probably you missed a lot. And she left. Yeah, we and I reduced these Quranic arguments to speculations. We took them as, oh yeah, just like, I was created once, why not? I will be created again. But as Yusuf said, this is not the argument Quran makes. The argument is that we, as Suhail was saying, and Muhammad said, we created you from the sperm. So this ayah talks about we, the creator. And once you reach the creator, the rest comes. Jazakallah khairan, Yusuf. That was a really important point. We should be really, really careful about that. Okay, it's 8 p.m. I'm going to ask if you have final remarks, questions, conclusions. If not, I will stop here. And inshallah, next week we can continue from the other type, which is it sometimes happens also that Quran mentions Almighty God's deeds of the hereafter in such a way that man may understand similar things in this world. Very similar to what we study, similarity within similarities, like Inception. But anyway, inshallah, next week we can start from here. No hands so far, so I'm concluding our discussion, inshallah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الفاتحة.